All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Bergstrom. I'm the Manager of Student Programs for FIUTS. You've probably seen my name around, getting emails from me every week and looking around at different questions you might have on the FIUTS website. But we have been doing this series of Google Hangouts this summer to help you answer some of your questions as you're getting ready to come to the University of Washington and get to ask them directly. I know that sometimes asking across time zones, it takes a little while to get responses. So this is just a casual time to ask some questions. And today we're talking with International Student Services. FIUTS partners really closely with ISS to help support you in your transition to the university. And ISS are the folks who deal more with your immigration and visa paperwork and making sure that you stay in status. So any questions you have related to that, go in ISS's direction, and I'll let Megan introduce herself. Just a preface before we start that we mentioned that you could ask questions related to your F1 or J1 visa. Actually, clarification on that Megan's able to talk about F1 visas. If you have really specific questions about J1s, she won't be able to answer them today, but we will make sure you know how to ask your questions in the future, and she'll have more general information about everything that ISS does. So Megan. Megan, I think you're still muted.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everybody. I'd really like to know if there are more undergraduates or grad students watching us today. So if you do get a chance to pop something over into the question box, and you don't actually have to ask the question, you can just go grad students, undergrad students, because that will help us know sort of what questions you might be more interested in as Amy and I chat. I wanted to do a quick introduction to International Student Services Office at UW. For those of you who haven't heard one of our intro presentations before. So we are the office that specializes in advising students about following the U.S. government laws for international students, people that are on an F1 student visa or a J1 exchange visitor visa who are also going to be studying at UW. And some types of exchange visitors are camp counselors or other things like that. And we can help you best if you're asking for advice before you're making a decision. So we really encourage students to use all of our online resources and our in-person advising to do a little research before you make a decision like, for example, starting an internship or keeping an on-campus job or changing class registration, because those are all areas that the U.S. government has laws about. And even if you're aware of the university policies about those things, sometimes the U.S. government laws are different. They can be more strict. And so we're here to help you understand kind of how to balance what the government wants you to be doing, what the university wants you to be doing, and what you want to be doing. So we're a great resource for that. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in ISS is the best way to get in touch with us with your questions. Some questions are super easy to answer. They are one-sentence questions where you can kind of say, yeah, sure, no problem, or that might be an issue. And so we recommend that students learn how to use our drop-in advising for those kinds of questions. Most weekdays, we're open from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock to take those kinds of questions with a drop-in advisor. And each of the staff members in the office takes turns doing drop-in advising every day. And so if you come with a quick question like that, what you would do is sign in at our counter to say, I just want to ask the advisor a super quick one-line question. And then you wait in line for a few minutes while other students are having their questions answered. And then when it's your turn, we'll have you come back and talk to the advisor and get an answer to that quick question. But a lot of immigration-related questions aren't quick. These are for situations that are more complex, or if when we give you the answer, yes, you're going to come back and say, but what if I add this? Or what if I change that too? Those kinds of questions are usually going to take a little more time. So for those types of questions, we offer advising appointments. And those are 30-minute one-on-one appointments with an advisor where you can come in, explain your first question, give an answer to that, and then ask, but what if I also want to do this? Or, but what about if I change that later? And then you can answer a couple of those, but what about questions for you. So you can kind of understand how to integrate different issues and concerns together in a way that keeps the government happy, keeps the school happy, and hopefully allows you to do interesting things. So that's my intro to the office. I don't see any questions coming in yet. So Amy and I will talk about some of the more frequent questions that our office gets. Amy, have you been getting any questions via email lately that you weren't sure how to answer?
There's a lot of questions from students who maybe have really specific things that they want to know about their visa that they ask FIUTS instead of asking ISS. So one thing that we always want to clarify is that FIUTS does not advise on immigration issues. You always want to address those questions to International Student Services. I actually don't have a really common question that's been coming in, but what I'm interested from you is what are some of the biggest challenges that you see students coming in for that you'd like them to think about ahead of time?
Well, one of the government's most strict rules is that international students need to stay enrolled full time every quarter, that they're not on some kind of approved leave. And this is one where we see quite a few students making a mistake. Most frequently, it's because the student has developed a health problem or gotten sick, and they just can't go to school. They're too ill. They might even be in the hospital. But the problem is they're not letting our office know, and that way we can't let the government know that the student is too sick to be in school and they're going to have to withdraw from a class or maybe stop taking all of their classes for a quarter until their health approves. That's definitely something that you can assist with when there's a doctor who will write a letter to say, hey, this UW international student is too sick to be in class. They need to take weeks or even months off to get better. When we get that kind of letter, we go into the government's database of international students and we put in that a doctor has recommended a quarter's leave or a quarter's reduced courseload, and then the student will be able to stay in the U.S. or go home, take that time they need to recover their health, and then go back to classes when they're feeling better. If we don't know about it, and if the student just stops attending classes because of their health reasons, we can't get the government to advance warning. Then the government is not okay with that at all. And what will happen is we will have to go into that same government database and say, we don't know where the student is. They're not attending class. And the government will go, that is a violation of the law. And students in that situation will actually have to leave the United States. So it's a fairly serious issue.
Great. Another question that I think we hear a lot is students want to work. Obviously, paying for college is an important part of your experience. And so what are some of the things that international students need to think about if they want to work while they're in the United States?
Well, the simplest place to work in the United States when you're an international student on an FJ visa is here at UW. Students can work up to 20 hours a week in what's called an on-campus job. And that is a really great way also to start your work history in the United States in an environment where supervisors are accustomed to working with students who are international and might be able to give you a little bit more support and guidance and even training so that you learn good work style and understand how management does things in the U.S. So up to 20 hours a week for classes are in session. And that can be in a really basic job, like in the kitchens and restaurants that serve students meals, or that can be a more advanced job for graduate students, for example. Your on-campus job might be an assistantship for your academic program, where they'll have you grading student homework or teaching classes even. So just because it's an on-campus job doesn't mean it's not challenging. But the government doesn't require a whole lot of special paperwork or application fees or processing time for you to be legally authorized to do that. Now, if a student's interested in an off-campus job or an off-campus internship or even some kinds of off-campus volunteering, that's very different. The government has a lot of regulations and policies about that. And they'll say in most cases that's not authorizable until you've been in the United States as an F1 for 9 months. And they have application fees. They have, in some cases, a request for up to 90 days of processing time on your application. So those are things where you have to start working with International Student Services Office months in advance of when you want to start so that you can give the government the application forms, the processing time, and in some cases the application fee. And then after you get permission, you can go off campus and do that internship or that job or that volunteer position. So yeah, huge difference between an on-campus job and anything off campus.
Okay, great. And then another thing, I often walk across campus and I'll run into a student and they're heading over to your office and I'm kind of talking to them what's going on and they are getting ready to go on a trip somewhere. So what do students need to know if they want to leave the United States potentially while they're still on their visa?
Well, so we've issued everybody who's coming to the U.S. as an international student either an I-20 form, that's the one for S, or a DS-2019 form, that's the one for J. And you could study here for years and years and years using that same I-20 or DS-2019 form. And it's a printed piece of paper. So the government wants an update on that piece of paper so that they know the information is still current on it for the border guards to check when you're coming back into the country after an international trip. So designed into those forms, there's a travel signature space, and an ISS staff member signs that travel signature zone to let the government know, hey, this student's doing okay. They're enrolled for the right number of credits every quarter. Nothing significant has changed so that we wouldn't give you a new I-20 or a new DS-319 form. We signed the current one you have to show everything's good and that you're welcome to come back to UW when you're at the border. And so if you don't have that travel signature when you're trying to re-enter after an international trip, the border guards don't know whether everything's going okay with you. And they can make it very difficult for you to re-enter. So anytime you're going to go on an international trip and come back to study at UW, make sure that you have a valid travel signature on your I-20 form or your DS-319 form. So those signatures last for 1 year after you get them. Right now, none of you will have them. We don't issue them to first-time students on your documents. They're added after you arrive. So keep in mind if, there's a national holiday here called Labor Day that happens in early September. Let's say that you've met some new friends and you all want to go up to Canada for Labor Day. Well, you're going to need to have a travel signature put on your I-20 or your DS-2019 in order to come back pre-visiting Canada.
Right, and I think that it sounds sort of silly, but one thing that you want to remember is that even though they're very close together, Canada is a different country from the United States, and so even
yeah,
you think,
totally different immigration rules.
Yes, exactly. So even if you're just going up to Vancouver, you're going to cross a border, and you have rules that are required, and you might even need a special visa depending on what country you're from. So keep that in mind.
Let me throw that out there. It's very good for students who will be studying at UW to do a little research on Canadian immigration rules too. For example, if you are from Australia, you might not need any kind of special tourist paperwork to enter Canada for that quick Labor Day trip. But if you're from another A country, Azerbaijan, you might need that visa. So do a little research on Canadian policies and Mexican policies. We see quite a few international students who would like to visit our neighbor to the south as well. And those are different countries with their own rules about who they will let into their country. They'll have you do different visa paperwork. You might even have to visit a city in the United States, like Los Angeles or San Francisco down in California, to go apply for those visas. So keep that in mind before you do any trip planning.
So we talked a little bit about working while you're at the University of Washington, getting on-campus jobs and those sorts of things. I know a lot of students start thinking, even as they first come to the United States, about what they're going to do after they graduate and what their options are. So could you talk a little bit about some of those additional training opportunities that students have?
Sure, I'll be able to talk about the F1 after graduation training program. The training program for F1 students that you can use actually either before graduation, after graduation, or split before graduation and after graduation. It's called OPT. OPT stands for Optional Practical Training, and it is a 12-month total of permission to stay in the U.S. and do paid work or an internship or unpaid volunteering related to your program of study. And this is the program the government offers that requires the most processing time and the biggest application fee. It's $380 every time you apply, and it does take the government about 90 days to process your application. So what a lot of students will do in their final year of studying at UW, when they're getting closer to graduation, they'll come in and check with us and say, I'm really interested in staying in the U.S. after graduation to do that work here program you told me about. How do I apply? And we have the forms and information that you need on our website. We show you how to fill those out and how to submit the right application paperwork and the fee to the government. And so then the next step is just waiting until they give you your approval about 3 months later.
Great. So we've talked about some of the things that I'm really familiar with that are very common questions that we often are referring students to ISS to talk to you all about. You maybe don't have time to answer really specifically some other questions, but what are some things that ISS also helps students with that are maybe less of those really, really common things? What kinds of things that maybe students don't even realize ISS is the place to go to talk to you?
Well, that's a really good question. We can help point you in the right direction on lots of different types of questions. One of the things, though, that we'll be communicating with you all about after you arrive is the United States income tax rules and how that works for international students. A lot of students who are here and aren't working will think, I don't need to do anything for U.S. income tax. And that's actually a big misunderstanding. Every single international student and exchange visitor coming to the U.S. is going to need to do at least one tax form for the U.S. government every year. I call that form the Leave Me Alone form. And you fill that form out to explain to the government, hey, I'm an international visitor. I'm studying at the University of Washington, and I don't need to pay any taxes because I didn't work or have any income that's taxable. So you file that form every year to say, leave me alone. And we send a message out to everybody in spring, because that's when the U.S. government has their tax deadline, to say, here's a great tool that the University of Washington pays for international students to use. It's called Glacier Tax Compliance, and it is an online software program that all international students can use for free. You log in and you answer some plain English questions about when you entered the U.S. and your immigration category, what you're studying, and how long you think you'll be here. And it figures out what kind of forms and paperwork you need in your situation for the for the income tax side of the U.S. government rules. So then, after you fill in that information, all you have to do is hit the print button. It puts your answers on the correct forms for your situation. You print them, you sign them, You put them in an envelope and you mail them off to the government, and you'll have met the U.S. government's income tax rules too. But the way students get confused is, again, they're thinking, that won't apply to me because I'm not earning any money. And I want everybody to remember, nope, every single international visitor, every single year that you're here, needs to file at least that leave the alone form. People who do have income, or maybe a family member here with them, might need to file more forms too. But start with the idea that every spring, just like doing your homework, you're going to have to do at least one government income tax form.
Great. So I will talk, but when we close, a little bit about next steps for students, things that they'll have to do in terms of, or things that are available for them in orientation and that sort of thing. But beyond orientation, how can students stay connected with ISS? What sort of things, you mentioned you send out information. Where can they be looking for that information? What should they be doing?
The main way that we communicate with international students is through our weekly newsletter. And there's a version that goes out to all F students, and there's a separate version that goes out to J students. So it's really important to check your University of Washington email account at least every week and make sure that you're getting our newsletter. Some students will tell us later on, oh, that was going to my junk mail or my spam account the whole time and I never realized it. So it's really good to make sure after you arrive that you start getting our new email newsletters. And if you don't, come and talk to us and we can help you get that sorted out. One of the other ways that you're going to hear from us right at the start of the year is we're going to have to do what's called FIUTS registration for all incoming students. And the government has a database of all international students called FIUTS. This is the database that is used to actually print your I-20 form and your DS 2019 forms. It's the database used to update those forms if you make any changes. And it's a database system that prompts the university every quarter to do a report on all the international students studying here and whether they're full-time and how things are going. So we might be emailing you to say, hey, it's FIUTS registration time, and we can't register your particular record until you give us this important piece of information. We're going to try and collect all the information we need at FIUTS orientation meeting tables events. So it's super important that everybody, regardless of your visa type or your major or your degree level, plans on attending the FIUTS orientation reading table. So that's when we're going to be getting all the information we need to do that mandatory quarterly report. But if we don't get your information for any reason, or if there's a question about it and something is unclear, that's when we're going to send you an email and go, hey, ISS is trying to reach you. We need some important information before we can file the quarterly government report for you.
Great. So yes, as Megan mentioned, and hopefully you've seen in your emails, there is an opportunity required actually for you to check in with International Student Services during International Student Orientation at what we call Greeting Table. That's available every day on September 13th through 16th, as well as the 19th and 20th. So there's a weekend in between, but we'll be back Monday and Tuesday. You just need to come once during that time, and you will do your official check-in with ISS where they make sure everything is set in terms of getting ready for that SEVIS reporting later. Your immigration documents are all checked in, everything. And you'll be getting some more information soon about what that process is going to look like. But make sure you have it on your calendar and you're planning to come in on one of those days to complete that process. In addition to that, during FIUTS International Student Orientation, we have several sessions that are for specific populations of students. So there's a graduate and professional student session, an exchange student session, as well as a freshman student session. And during each of those sessions, an International Student Services advisor will be represented and will be talking to you more in depth about things you need to know to make sure that you maintain your status while you're here in the United States studying at the University of Washington. And then after those individual student-specific sessions, we also have a whole series of information sessions to help introduce you to different campus resources. So there'll be someone from the health insurance plan talking about what you need to know to use the student health insurance. There'll be a lot of different offices doing presentations about resources that you can access. And included in those sessions are a couple of sessions by International Student Services. They will be doing one talking more about on-campus employment and internships and what you need to know in relation to your visa, as well as there's a career center advisor who will be talking about sort of how that relates to your career pursuits. And then there's another session that talks about visas and travel. So they go more in depth in that information you need to know if you're going to be traveling. So really recommend when you get your information session schedule, you look for those sessions and plan to attend to make sure that you know all the really important information that International Student Services has to share with you. So I think we're going to wrap up at this point. I'm going to let Megan address any final things that she might have. And yeah, so Megan, any final thoughts for them?
No, other than just know when to email ISS instead of emailing FIUTS. Like Amy was saying, that FIUTS is getting emails about visa questions, immigration questions, work on campus questions, and those are questions that are best sent to the UWISS at uw.edu email account, and then we'll get back to you in a few days with a response.
Great. Yes, FIUTS is always happy to sort of help you. We will forward along messages and that sort of thing, but the best way, the most direct way is for you to connect and email ISS in the first place, because they're the ones who can talk about those matters. FIUTS is here to support you more in the transitional part of your program here, and then we have ongoing programs to help you connect with other students. So we work together, but ISS is really the ones to talk to about your immigration and visa questions. So that's it for today. Continue to watch for our emails about different things to help you in preparation for your arrival in the United States. We're getting really close, and we're really excited to welcome you in just a few more weeks. And then we will have one more of these Google Hangouts if you'd like to join us, where we'll be doing some Q&A about orientation. So a lot of events, you might be confused what everything is, and so we'll be answering your questions about that. So we look forward to seeing you, and thanks for joining us.